6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Here.
Here. Isaac, if you'd review.
What happened? Well, let's keep going and see how it goes here. And of course, the one day.
That'll be interesting. Isaac, would you please address revenue and expenditures?
Thank you, Chair, committee members. We'll go ahead and start going through the report. Let me just pull them up on the screen so anybody that's viewing online can see it. Hopefully it'll play back on the end. So again, thank you. This is Measure S Oversight Committee for the fiscal year of 1920 for today's date of April 28, 2021. We will go through our analysis as we normally do each year with the audited financials. We'll look at a summary analysis. We'll go through the general fund as far as an adopted budget, expenditure summaries, financial summary, our statements. We'll also look at funding allocations for Measure S, general audit reports, expenditure reports, CalCAR details, and supporting documentation for the revenues that are coming in. So we'll start on page 1, where we go through the analysis that is necessary for Measure S to make a supplement to the general fund. Okay, so the overall percentage in which we need to target would be about 60%. So starting from the top, you can see the actual expenditures for police at 6.5 and fire at 3.6, giving us a total of 10.2 for each department, or each division as a whole. So the general fund actual expenditures were 15.1, giving us this percentage of 67.55%. Again, hitting that overall target of 60% where we're well over, which again gives us the authorization to allow to supplement the general fund. So dollars spent in safety and Measure S to be considered, $9 million. The amount actually spent in excess of the percentage, 1.1 million. Amount available to transfer Measure S, direct expenditures, that's a 1.3. Actual transfers Measure S was a direct expense at 1.3 as well, just slightly under the actual amount prior. General fund expenditure in excess of Measure S transfer, it was $252,000. That would bring the Measure S fund balance at the end of the fiscal year of June 30th, 2020 to just over $1 million. That'll take us on to the next sheet, which is, again, our actual expenditures. You can see those numbers actually pulled over into the prior report, but you can see the overall budget or the overall actual for the general fund was 15.1, again, referenced in your first sheet, which looking at this, the total expenditures was 7% again. Going on to our next sheet, which is our budget. I did have a typo at the top. I apologize. I put in there 1819 in error. But the overall expenditures and dollar amounts reviewed will still stay the same. There was another typo though, just a small amount, not going to impact the overall report itself. But you can see that there is a net gain of $21,000. That is not accurate. Some of the numbers were incorrect in type in. Operations is actually slightly lower. Fire prevention was actually higher, just making up the difference of the two. But again, the overall variance in the analysis there, not a financial impact overall to measure. Yeah, because this is a budget amount, we had a balanced budget. Any questions before I move on to the next sheets? Before I move on, I just want to make sure who's, before we open it up. Okay, going on to the next sheet, we'll go on to the financial statements. Again, coming straight out of my reports. You can see these actual reports were printed as a 4/22/21, giving you the most accurate information. And again, these are coming from the audited statements as well. And you can see that it ties back to your total reserves / balances of just over $1 million for this fund. I will state that we do have some committed amounts going that are tied into these numbers potentially for the next fiscal budget years, which we allocated about $325,000 to a new fire truck. But other than that, we will keep carrying those balances forward.
As soon as I start to get pictures, I will definitely share them with you guys for sure.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Sorry, go ahead. It's just an actual accounting method of payables that are still outstanding, and they be encumbered for the next period. So if we had an expense that actually came through on the next period, it actually gets encumbered back to the appropriate period. It's potentially actually rolled back to the appropriate period. Other questions? Move on to the income statement. You can see from this statement, we brought in 2.2 million with a total interest about 12,000 allocated to this fund, bringing a net income or total revenue brought in 2,285,000. You can see the transfers out, which we'll get into on another sheet as well, that you can tie back to those references. And again, you'll see the expenditures coming out of support division, operations division, which are both labor related. And then out of the other departments, from fire administration, you will see some expenditures itself for supplies, tools, training, equipment, things of that nature. Which again, the detail has been provided to you about those transactions. We can go into that detail right now if you'd like, if you had any questions for the information that was provided to you. In support, I believe it was a sergeant. I will have to double check that. This is merely a budget allocation that is done, so we can go back and find that information for you. I want to say it's either a sergeant or an officer, but again, given that support number, it's an officer. Yeah. Okay. That used to be two. Operations, you actually have. All right. That's correct. I think it was actually an individual that retired. If I remember correctly. That's correct. We changed the position into the next fiscal in the org chart itself. So this one's majority of the area, you can see it's still a big percentage of it, but I think it was the retirement of Myron. In the next budget cycle. Any other questions? Can we move on? Okay. The next sheet, again, you come in straight out of my accounting system, general ledger report for the transfers, totaling 1.3. Again, this was a budgeted amount overall, as you can see from the statement on the screen or within your report. Outlays from the PD within this budget period, there's no transfer to it. The only allocation that was done for Measure S was already done in the prior year. So moving on to the next. Yeah, I don't believe, I'd have to look back in the transfer sheets prior from this one. So not be in this budget year, that would.
That's the large part of personnel.
Yeah. Correct, because the budget kit was already allocated as a whole through all the funds in the measure and everything that was done for that. So when we did our budget and the allocation that was done in April 2019, full budget and scope was allocated at that point in time. Fire budget always has equipment within the fiscal year. No, because the budget was already taken care of in other funds. Yeah, Rob always gets his cut.
I'm gonna make sure.
He's rolling his eyes.
We just didn't pay for it.
Yeah, in the Measure S for the police, it's always been for the majority of it a big chunk of personnel. Okay, and fire has always been an allocation of equipment, training, and things of that nature. And then we turn around and do the allocation back for whatever remaining balance is budgeted, and that supplement is offset within each department, making sure we maintain that 60-40 split between the two. So the next budget, the next sheets themselves, we'll go into the expenditures first before we go into the sales tax. So you see multiple line items, again, fire really having the expenditures within this fund, PD not having it because it is majority of labor, actually all labor for this period. So there are some supplies, CalCard transactions, Vincent's communications. The CalCard sheet is attached and you have received copies of the receipts that were for all these transactions. So if you have any comments or questions about those transactions, now would be the appropriate time.
Fund that had a note that it was.
So those were for fire shelters. And the number that we had to purchase, the grant didn't cover all of it. So it was a partial grant and then the rest came out of Measure S.
What is a fire shelter?
It is what we utilize on brush fires. It's the big foil that you've probably seen on the news that in an emergency situation, if they're being overrun, it's a last ditch effort to protect themselves. And they cover up with that shelter.
Is there any other questions about those transactions? From any of the committee?
Those were for tax. When we go out of county, our paramedics, so they go out as line paramedics, so they have to carry all their equipment with them. And those are packs that allow them to do that. They're like very large backpacks.
Moving on the report. I'll go ahead and give you a moment and you can review every transaction that's come in for the sales tax transactions. I will say that we had a change in our accounting method. We are accruing 100% of July and also 100% of the August payment that's coming in. If you look at your sales transaction reports, you can see they're always about two months behind in which we're actually receiving those payments. Given that we changed our services for who does our tax consulting, we made it appropriate to get what best practices are. What we used to accrue is 1.5. Now we're accruing 2. Actually, I think it was half of July is what we're doing. So we did change the accounting method. So you do see more being allocated back and encumbered. But again, it's just falling in line with what best practices are. Yeah, we did. And that's the biggest chunk of it is why.
I would have thought they would have dropped.
And actually sales tax overall within our projections, I mean, you did have an impact within this fiscal. This was the beginning of COVID. But even coming into this fiscal, our overall projections have surpassed. So sales taxes stayed, I wouldn't say stable, but they have taken a drop and we are seeing up within the next fiscal, or we're not seeing the leaps and bounds of what we expected for it to fall. So. Questions? Well, I think at this point, we'll turn it over to the public and see if there's any people on the line. We do have 2 individuals on the line. I believe it is *9 if you'd like to raise your hand. And if you have any questions regarding the report or for the committee. Ask them to talk. Number ending in 530. Did you have any comments or questions regarding the Measure S committee and report? Mrs. Deladigo, did you have any questions regarding the report?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
We can't hear you now, yeah.
Oh, thank you, thank you. You know, I was looking at your page number, let's see. It would be your third page on the packet. This is not numbered, but it's on the third page of the packet. And you have it highlighted in yellow where it has the police support and the police field operations. And there's a percentage of 67.55%. And the total expenditures for the budget were $15,103,615.29 for the city's general fund. And from that general fund, we are using 67.55% of the budget. Is that correct for police support and for police and fire? Is that correct? How many employees are we talking about here?
For that part. Yeah, so I'm sorry, Mrs. Delagio. I'm gonna try and answer the question as best as possible. I'm catching piece of it. I did understand as far as employees and question as far as getting funded. Within the fund itself, there's about, which we were discussing earlier, there was originally about 2.5 employees budgeted directly into that fund.
So
As
these
you know,
are
there is a
direct?
supplement that comes into the general fund that will
These are
continue to help
direct?
labor overall.
These are
So-
direct costs? Specifically for salary, is that correct,
So
or?
the supplement that does come into the general fund does cover all expenditures overall, including salary and supplies and capital outlay.
So these monies that were collected funded 2.5, the salary for 2.5 employees for fire and for the police department, is that correct?
That was just police within that fund.
So one police officer is, or 1.5 police officers, or 1.25 police officers, and then the other, because you said 2.5 employees, so the other is coming for the fire department, 1.25 from there.
So there's 2.5 within the measure, and I apologize if we can't, it's very difficult to make you out. It's coming out really jumbled here. So in the measure of fund themselves, there was allocation of 2 officers and 1 sergeant. There was no staff for the fire department, it was equipment only. And then the supplement is into the general fund to assist with staffing, equipment, and capital outlay.
So Isaac, is this typically how many employees this pays for? 2.5 employees for half the, it's, what is it? We're collecting a 1/4 cent of sales tax, and we are funding 2.5 positions? Is that what I'm understanding?
So we're collecting 0.5% or a cent in sales tax dollars. that
I
are
thought
directly
it was a
allocated to the Measure
quarter
S
of a
fund.
cent.
We
Isaac, it's
received
half of a cent now?
2.2. Yes, we are funding those positions directly out of that fund, but we're actually funding the rest of safety and helping fund the rest of safety. That includes fire and police, with the remaining balances being transferred into the general fund.
So in lieu of hiring more firemen and more police officers or fire personnel, we are using the rest of the funds for indirect costs instead of direct costs for salaries, benefits, and retirement for the police officers and for the fire department personnel. Is that right?
It is assisting with labor as a whole and the direct costs as well. Yes. I'm sorry if I made out your question correctly.
No, I did look at the expenditures and I was just trying to understand, because I looked this over when I received it, and then I did go down and I asked several questions at City Hall to try to understand exactly how many personnel we are actually paying from this measure. Thank you.
So, Ms. Delgado, the best thing I can say at this point, because of technical issues we're having, is give me a call tomorrow and I'll be happy to walk through the full report with you and answer any questions that you may have. Is that okay?
I think it's fine. I mean, as long as the committee knows, I think as long as they know, I mean, I'm fine with that. I don't understand it though. I'm sorry. And I'm not privy to the experience they have, but I'm just somewhat confused.
Okay. Okay. I'll go ahead and give you a call tomorrow and we can discuss it further. And then we'll allow the committee members to ask more questions that they feel fit. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I can't. It's difficult to make her out. So.
Understand that.
Oh, we got one more person. Let's try. Let's see if we can open it up. So phone number ending at 530. There you go.
Hi there, it's Scott Robertson. Just wanted to let you know I was listening in. My phone's been kind of going in and out. No questions at this time, and just wanted to let you know that the audio has been a little bit spotty, at least on my cell phone. But I've gotten the gist of it. Thank you for the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. There's no one else on the line that has not already commented. Thank you.
Everybody look at me.
In both ways.
No,
I started there and then you were last.
so I mean, with the lack of the fifth, did he put something out on the Facebook page, obviously, to solicit applications of interest because I thought I didn't know it was Josh. When I saw that we're swearing in a new member, I thought that had been addressed. I'm pretty sure in our last meeting that, in fact, I think you closed by asking that we be notified. Change because there had been 2 meetings that Vigil had missed. So I kind of feel like we spun our wheels, for another, and I know COVID hit and other stuff. So it is what it is. But I think if we get it out through social media, I think we'll get a
Yeah, we'll definitely put it out and put out the word as much as possible so we can bring that committee member back in. The good news is we do have a quorum, so we can complete the process. But yeah, we will definitely actively seek a new committee member.
What's the criteria? Is there, I know one of the committees, you can't be a business owner in Selma. I think it's personnel or one of them, I thought.
Yeah, I don't think for this committee, it's business owner factor. I think it's just a citizen of the community.
So we need to,
Correct. Take a
what we need to say.
Sure. Well, the main message is actually going to be towards council when you come in. I think you just take a vote to go ahead and approve the report.
Aye.
Thank you, committee.